This is the 10 records I listen to the most, or artists, done by Chris at The Long Cut. I just subscribed to his channel yesterday. I think you should too. When I watched a few of his videos, I realized I had watched them before. And I subscribed, and it's a great channel. You should really, really subscribe to him. Now, it's hopefully not a bit of the telephone game or the story game where you tell the story to the person next to you on and on and on, and the story changes. I hope I haven't screwed this up. I originally did this on Instagram saying I'm gonna do a video about it, and I showed my records, and I was gonna talk about them. But the comments section was flooded with, yeah, dude, we know those are your records. No reason to do a video. But then something changed. I don't want to get emotional. I could cry or I could rage for what I'm about to say. One of the members of the Jazz Bums, world famous Jazz Bums, Mike, gentleman. I should say used to be a gentleman. He challenged me publicly on one of my selections in one of my bands. And at first it was just Mike, then it was his family, and as of this morning, his extended family attacking me, okay? And it's slanderous at this point. And I'm going to defend myself, okay? Why it's so hurtful is because I was patient zero with the Jazz Bums. I knew these chaps' potential before anyone. Yet I kept it private that they crisscross the nation in railroad cars because they're literally bums, okay? Addicted to jazz, drinking railroad gin, homemade gin. You know how dangerous that is? I kept that to myself. But then all of a sudden they get a few OGs and they can start talking about all different types of music. Puff their chest out. Well, I'm gonna defend one of the records in this pile. So let's get to it. Try to go fast. Roxy Music, self-titled. I talked about this record some time ago. I listened to it all the time, but it brings back such good memories in the sense that there was this biker gang of girls, bicycle biker gang of girls in my neighborhood, and they were about 4 or 5 years older. They were very pretty, and more importantly, very cool. And I would want to hang out with them all the time. And by the time they were listening to a lot of Brian Ferry, but they taught me about Roxy Music. I feel like they set me up on something. But by that time, the Eno Roxy Music, kind of crazy version of Roxy Music was over. But I would go to the record store and I wanted to be cool with these gals. So I'd ask my parents and I would ask them for these Roxy Music records, which they found a bit suspect in the sense like, who is telling you about Roxy Music when you look at the covers? So it brings back fond memories, but I really do like this. And Brian Ferry, a long time ago, I think he said that they formed Roxy Music purely because they hated hippies. I don't know if that's true or not. Probably something edgy to say back in the day about Roxy Music, self-titled. Plus, this has my favorite label of all time. The Pink label, UK Island labels are... I've been attached to the hip on this record for a very long time. Aphex Twin, Selected Ambient Works, 85-92. I just have had it so long. And it's like a few of these other records. Every time I listen to it, you discover something new. And it's not ambient in its purest sense, but it's of its time. Putting in a little bit of the techno or dance culture into it, the experimental, the beats, blending with the ambient is just masterful. Aphex Twin, Selected Ambient Works, 85-92. Hell of a title. Somewhat in the same kind of vein, Tortoise TNT. There's, God, the light, dude. I'm back in Yoko and John's room. Tortoise TNT, I'm sure many people selected this. You could select other Tortoise records, but it was such a great record when it came out, and that post-math, post-slint, post-rock, whatever you want to call it, it broadened my horizons of the new music. Their influences had me seek out music that I'd never heard before, and the minimalism of Reich, or the experimental, or the noise rock, or the jazz, these little suites or vignettes on this album are really, really special, and it's a record I listen to all the time. Tortoise TNT. We kind of joke with each other sometimes about having too many copies of a certain record or band. And that's certainly the case with me, Ornette Coleman, The Shape of Jazz to Come. Arguably one of the most important, it is one of the most important jazz records of all time. To me, though, it's one of the most important American records of all time. I must have 7 copies of this record. By the way, I think this is the 45 RPM version. I don't want to get carried away because I have with this record before. This record is a West Coast jazz record. And it might sound strange to say that, but it's a West Coast jazz record. And what I mean by that, this record could have only happened on the West Coast. And I'm going to show a record that could have only happened on the East Coast. Its influence on art and jazz and music was atomic in scale. I think something that is very important that's not discussed a lot is that America is a young country, a very young country at this point. And its art, architecture, modern art, and music had progressed really well compared to its, say, counterparts in Europe. But the critical reviewing and the ability to describe these points of view in a critical way lagged. What I mean by art and modern art and music lagged compared to the European counterparts because of their classical heritage or modern classical. They had a great school of critical review. This made people better writers of art, critical reviewers of art. It put it into hyperdrive because they were forced to. And its scale, just not in the influence of music and art, the critical review of art was very, very special too. Ornette Coleman, Shape of Jazz to Come, I listen to this all the time. I wanted to pick another jazz record because I listen to jazz so much, but not do too many. And I couldn't decide between Wayne Shorter and Andrew Hill, so I picked Andrew Hill. I throw this term around a lot. Andrew Hill is a proper genius. I listen to Blackfire all the time. People have other favorite Andrew Hill records. I think this is mine. You hear Monk, you hear his influences, his ability to bring in that modern classical masters in Europe into his work. They got well aware of Andrew Hill pretty quick because he's a genius, and his compositions and his ability to express a point of view is at the highest level when it comes to jazz. Andrew Hill, Blackfire, I listen to this all the time. Let's go to France. Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix, a perfect pop rock record. But I listen to it all the time because it brings back such fond memories, and it was a difficult time for a lot of people when this came out, if you look at the year. It's because so many of my friends and so many of my family members love this record, and we enjoyed it together. We enjoyed going to shows together. And Phoenix was great because I followed Phoenix and they got better and better and better. And I'm not saying they peaked at this, but their ability to blend in the popular, semi-popular indie music that was going on in America with what they were doing was seamless. And it really added to make, I think, a perfect pop record. Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix. Here we go, Jazz Bum Mike. Ramon's self-titled. It is so bright. Much like Ornette Coleman's influence on jazz was atomic, the Ramones' influence on the future of rock was atomic. I think they are the best, if not most important, American rock band of all time. And they represent so much of the chaos of America. There's far left wing in here. There's far right wing members in here. There are prostitutes, weird diseases, drug use, everything. They're just self-described freaks who loved the Beach Boys, who loved the Beatles, who loved the girl groups, and loved the New York Dolls, of course. And these 4 weirdos could have only done this on the East Coast. It's not a masterpiece in music sense. It's a masterpiece in what it accomplished and the speed and the reflection of America. When you don't think it could ever walk again, it still puts its foot forward, and it's usually probably going to go too fast and break things. That's America, and that's certainly the Ramones, self-titled. I'm sure this made everyone's list. My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. I remember, there's nothing I can really say about this other than the fact that I remember where I was working at a record store, sitting on a stool, opened a promo, and the A&R put a note and said, "You're really gonna like this." Now, we ordered Creation imports. I was well aware of My Bloody Valentine before this, and I liked what I hear. I didn't love it, but I liked what I hear. But I listened to this over and over for the rest of the day. It blew my mind and had a significant influence on the record I'm gonna show you next that I listen to all the time. Sugar, Bob Mould, Sugar, Copper Blue. Without Loveless, you don't have this record. And Ornette Coleman lived for his art, struggled for his art, almost in a fountainhead stubbornness way. He was going to do what he was going to do. And Bob Mould suffered for his art too. And for him to have this success, if you know his past history with Husker Du and major label failure and this, that, and the other, he was in a dark place and made a remarkable record. And the dark place is reflected on Beaster, which is on a separate record. But Copper Blue, I listen to it all the time. And he says, without Loveless, you wouldn't have this. And you can tell in his buried vocals and what he was doing, the profound influence. Now, it's ironic because early My Bloody Valentine sounds like a derivative of Husker Du. But Bob Mould does My Bloody Valentine better than they did Husker Du. But I listen to this all the time, Copper Blue. Now, this record should also not be a surprise to anyone. I think it's one of the greatest pop rock records of all time. Stone Roses, self-titled. But I think the why it hit me so hard is because pre-Nirvana, at least in America, and there was some popularity with certain labels, American labels in Europe at that time, but there was something happening. We're listening to a lot of Dinosaur Jr., we're listening to Soundgarden, Mudhoney, a lot of the SST records. It was dominant in my group of friends. So when this hit me, blending the dance culture of Manchester, but also that psychedelic pop that I love from the 60s, and the Byrds, huge influence on this, and their reference point of love on this record is there. And it really, I think it was so impactful because it was so different to what I was listening to day after day after day, and it stuck with me. Stone Roses, self-titled. Now, I changed my Costello record from my Instagram video. I think I might be past 10. Get happy. And the 33 RPM version is incredible. It just hits you with song after song after song, and they're short and they're awesome, and it keeps going after you. And it's just a remarkable testament to the guy's career at the time that he couldn't miss. Or if he did, you missed by a little. Get happy. Elvis Costello. Spiritualize. Spaceman 3, J Spaceman, you know what he did before this. But much like Phoenix peaked in a pop rock sense, I think he peaked with this record. Ladies and gentlemen, we're floating in space. Has incredible gospel tied with the psychedelic sounds, and the spaced out sounds of this record are great. You know it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're floating through space. I listen to this all the time. I did a hard edit because I realized I was going far too long. So I'll be quick here. Can, who doesn't listen to Can all the time? I think this is just perfect. It's just unbelievably amazing. And I wanted to give special time. The reason I wanted to do the edit is Mondays at the Enfield Tennis Academy, Jeff Parker. I listen to this all the time. It was my favorite jazz record of the year a few years ago. I don't do lists, I just do like singular records, and this was number one. Part of it is this selfishness in the sense that as a frustrated guitar player who had to take a break because of my condition, Jeff Parker can do it all. on various forms of music. But the one thing I love about him is his compositions are fantastic. But he's so freaking tasteful. And what I mean by that is just the notes and the places he goes on that fretboard, there doesn't seem to be a question. It doesn't seem to be any vagueness of where he should go or what he did. He's just got enormous taste as a player. And if I could be Jeff Parker for one day as a guitar player, it'd be Nirvana. So Jeff Parker, Mondays at the NFL Tennis Academy, which is still a wild name for a bar. Ice Castles. I mean, what do you want me to say that hasn't been said already by so many? And now in its audiophile forms, I like to think I played a small part in getting Ice Castles back on top to the mountaintop where it will be now for infinity. Ice Castle soundtrack. I listen to it all the time. Have a good day.